Soul Sparks with your host Saima. Today's guest takes us on one of the most profound journeys of loss, love, and awakening. Gregg Korbon, a physician, army veteran, martial artist, outdoor educator, and most profoundly and importantly, father, shares the extraordinary story of his son Brian, a young boy who somehow knew his time on earth was brief. But those passing opened Greg's heart to a spiritual reality he never believed in before. This is a story of grief, becoming light, of love beyond death, and of learning through life's most unimaginable challenges. Greg, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're warmly welcome. It's my pleasure to have you here, Greg. So, Greg, let's begin with your son Brian's story. Like, when did you first realize that he somehow had an awareness of his own passing?
hmm All right. The story is in my book, Beyond Reason. So, lessons from the loss of a gifted child. Um, and it started when he was a few weeks away from his ninth birthday, and we were getting ready to celebrate and have his party. And he said he didn't want to have his party because it would bring his death closer. And then, and then he got very depressed, and we couldn't figure out why, and was obsessed by thoughts of death and had trouble sleeping. My wife's a minister and pastoral counselor, and my specialty is pain management, which has a lot of psychology involved in that. And we couldn't figure out what was going on. He had trouble sleeping, and we took him to a therapist, but we couldn't find anything wrong. But he loved going to the therapist because he liked learning about therapy. He was a brilliant child. And the therapist said he learned a lot from Brian. Brian kind of opened up and let him know how his mind worked in a way that he'd never seen before. So over the next couple of months, with all the support that we gave him, he started his birthday is in January. And then February, March, April, he started coming out of his depression. And then he said it was time for his party. But he didn't want it to be a birthday party. It was a happy spring party, which turned out it was his going away party. And he just wanted 3 friends with no presents. And then 2 days before he died, uh, Catherine came home, and he had found Brian on the driveway with his wagon full of teddy bears and camping equipment. Said it was time for him to go on his trip. And Catherine said, "You can't go on your trip. You got your party tomorrow." So he'd been afraid to camp out. So Catherine sat down on the side of the driveway, put him on her lap, and they talked about it and said, "I'll tell you what, why don't we, instead of making that your trip going down away, we'll just pitch a tent in the backyard and you can camp out, and that'll be your trip for tonight." And he thought that was a good idea. So we pitched the tent. He and then our dog Sasha, who was very brave, all spent the night together. The next morning, he got up. It was a beautiful day, and he had his party, and then he went to his room for a few hours, and we didn't realize that he was putting up a sign, "Brian's on a trip, don't worry about me," writing letters to people, goodbye letters. And then he went to his baseball game. And on the way to the baseball game, he said, "We're here, we need to mail the letter." And I said, "They don't have stamps, they won't get there." And he said, "You don't understand, they will get there." So we took him to his baseball game. Little league, he was the littlest kid on the team. And he'd normally been afraid of the ball. And so we got to the baseball field, and he was the happiest boy I ever saw. He lost all of his fear, asked the coach to make him pitcher, which is kind of out of beyond his ability. And then he got up for his first at bat. He was so little he got walked to first base. The next little boy did a triple, and finally, yeah, on the way there, he said he wanted to score a run more than anything. So he got his heart's desire. He crossed home plate, scored his first run, put up, we were all cheering. He gave me a high five, thumbs up, went to his dugout with his team, and then he collapsed. And then we've had all these paranormal things that happened before, and then during, and then after. And um, uh, so that began my journey. And there was so many things happening, like uh, when he told us he was going to die, his picture began to fade that we had just framed. And just, it was so many things. I couldn't keep track of it. So I started writing this down. And then there was always the book, but the unusual aspects kept going on. And that's how I kept writing so I could try and figure it out. And then hopefully other people could learn from Brian too, because he was a gifted little teacher.
Mm-hmm. I I mean, I really appreciate you sharing that, Greg. It's such a, profound and touching part of Brian's story. And hearing this really brings to light that just how extraordinary Brian's awareness was and the impact it had. It really gives us a glimpse into the depth of Brian's spirit and the connection you shared.
Yes. Yeah. So he was very gifted. He wrote beautiful poetry. He did all kinds of things I couldn't do. And his sister, we had a rough time because Brian had medical problems when he was little, but they were all supposedly taken care of. And then his little sister, Lynn, we were told it was cerebral palsy, but it turns out she was in the first wave of the autism kids. And so it was difficult for her to find friends and stuff like that. And Brian was really good with her. He was like her best friend. And they went to the same little school, the Free Union Country School, which was really a good place for Brian. And then
Mhm.
after that, when he died, though, we took him to our neighborhood school, public school, and he had a hard time there. The kids were really mean to him. He got bullied a lot. And uh, so that was part of it. It was really tough right before he left. There was a lot of stuff going on. Um, let's see. A couple of weeks before he died, um, at bedtime, I'd never seen it. A Luna moth was tapping on his window of his
Mhm.
bedroom. And I remember the full moon shining on the Luna moth, and it was there for 10 days. And never seen a Luna moth before or since. And it cast, under a full moon, it cast its shadow on his floor right by his bed. There was just so many little things that were just, so beautifully orchestrated, his saying goodbye. And then afterwards, um, teaching me that there was so much more reality than I thought.
Life has its, own mysterious ways.
Yes, right. Yeah, there was an intelligence orchestrating this that was something I'd had paranormal experiences before, but I had kind of dismissed them because in our society that's not really accepted. And then part of the journey for me was I went to a support group, my wife and I, for people who have lost children, the Compassionate Friends. And we'd gone for a year, and then we told Brian's story. And then the other parents started chiming in with their stories too, that they had been afraid to talk about. And about half the parents had stories like ours. Um, there was one little girl, Stephanie, and she sounded a lot like Brian. She died when she was 5 at her preschool, and she was also very gifted and very talented. And she always told her mom that she wouldn't go out and go to school like the other children. Um, and she was exceptionally joyful. And right before she died, she drew a picture of herself. She went down the slide at a preschool, and a rope got caught around her neck and strangulated her. And right before she died, she drew a picture of her hanging in dark colors by the neck, by like a noose. And over on the other side, in bright colors, she was some angel from heaven was dropping halos down to her, and she was putting halos on. So we had of 8 couples there that had been living with their children at the time. 4 had stories where the child the night before he died in a car accident would come and tell him that what he had accomplished in life and what he wanted to accomplish in the future. That was one little boy. So there were 4 of us. So it was pretty remarkable. But this stuff is everywhere if you look for it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. So, like, after Brian's passing, you were led into a completely new relationship with spirituality. So, can you share some of the earliest signs or experiences that shifted your beliefs?
Yes. So I had one thing that I had done during my life was do a lot of adrenaline and activities to distract me from my inner journey. It turns out, and then I finished that. I came back from race car driving school, and I was sitting with a nurse at the hospital I worked at, and I said, I've done all the exciting things I'd planned to as a kid, and I wonder what's next. And she started talking about this guy she used to work for, Robert Monroe. And he was involved, he was running the local cable TV company, which was new at the time. And that he took just for fun, took a job as a part-time secretary for him. And he was doing all kinds of strange things. She said she got messages about out-of-body experience, stuff like that. So I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. And then I also signed up to take a bicycle mechanics course because I decided I was going to ride my bike to work. Everybody had told me it was too dangerous. But one common thing I discovered was that the people that had lost children, the parents, we all lost our fear of death for some reason. It didn't matter what our religion was or our background. It just, part of us was on the other side, and for some reason, we were no longer afraid. So I was not afraid of dying. So I just started to take up bike commuting. And I commuted almost 50,000 miles in the next 15 years. But the guy who ran the course, I was the only adult. Everybody else was like 12 years, 12 to 15 years, something like that. And I was also the only bald member. So I was in the course. He invited me to come mountain bike with him and then he had a little group of homeschoolers, and he gave me directions. And it turns out, turn here, go past the Monroe Institute. So a series of coincidences led me to Bob Monroe, the Monroe Institute, where I had some amazing experiences. And also, the bike mechanic's father was a fellow named Joseph Chilton Pierce. And he had written a book, Magical Child. And because of his friendship, he was kind of a mentor to Bob Monroe that a lot of people don't know. And the reason that Bob set up his institute there was because Joe was there. Joe was there. He was like an author, a mystic, and he traveled around the world and met the most amazing children, most gifted children, avatars and stuff like that. And he spent his summers in India, in an ashram there. So studying with, uh, I can't remember, but one of the well-known, um, one of the gurus at the time. So probably if there's anybody in the world that could help me understand a magical child, it was the guy who wrote the book Magical Child, who just happened to be in my backyard. So that was that, and between the two of them and Bob Monroe and other stuff, it was an amazing journey. And I got to see all kinds of things that I didn't think were possible.
Hmm. That's incredibly moving, Greg. And I would say that it's powerful to hear that how such a profound loss opened the door to an entirely new way of understanding life and connection, something so much bigger than ourselves. And your willingness to embrace this journey even through pain is truly inspiring.
Yes, thank you. It's it was it was such a great loss that I couldn't manage it myself. It was just too big. The emptiness was too big. Um, and in that emptiness was love for Brian, and it became kind of a guide. So all I had to do was follow the love, and Brian was no longer Brian. He had evolved. Uh, there were three dreams that I saw that I had, and then I heard that the other grieving parents had, um, which I'll let me share with you because I never saw anybody write about it. It's like the stages of grief, which that I also talk about in the book. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was a friend of Bob Monroe, so I got to know her a little bit too, and and she actually left something out of her stages of grief, but which is I'll talk about that in a minute. But the dreams that we all had were first the pain dreams that kept us in touch with our pain. We'd go back and relive the the death. And so at the time, I had turned off my emotions, but in my dreams, I came back and I felt the pain of his death, and that was a portal. So that's the first thing pain reveals, and it's a portal. And if you're going to heal, you have to go into that, which is a common theme. And then the next dream was the that we all had was the I'm okay dream, and that usually comes after the shock. So you're in shock for a couple of weeks after a big, huge loss, and then after that starts to wear off this tiny bit, you get these dreams from your loved one. They're okay. They're not in pain. The only problem, the healing is yours to do, but they're fine, and that's very reassuring. And then not everybody gets the goodbye dream, but most of us did. And for me, it was like I had the dream. I called him back because I missed him so much. And he kind of let me know that it was time for me to let go of him to continue my journey. I had to let go of my memories of him. The love continued, but the past was gone, and that he needed to evolve. He couldn't stay as Brian. He needed to move on. So those are the goodbye dreams, and uh, and I found that was very helpful to know that.
Hmm. Yes, that's courageous, Greg. Now, like, as both a doctor and father, you face two immense identities at once. So now, do you like view pain and challenge as necessary teachers rather than enemies?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's been my hobby for 50 years is working on a challenge course. Um, actually 55 years. That's been like an ongoing thing. When I was in college, I came out of the army and I did not live in a dormitory, which is where everybody makes friends. It was very lonely and hard to make friends for the first 6 months. So in my senior year, I was involved in a lot of outdoor activities. I was president of the outing club, and I went to the head of this was a Duke, and I went to the head of the PE department, and I said, how about we have an incoming challenge program for incoming freshmen before freshman week? And he thought that was a good idea. So we set it up. It was called Duke Outward Bound, but it evolved to Project Wild. So for a week, incoming freshmen come do an outward bound experience where you really bond through challenge. the barriers break down, and then they show up at freshman week with like 12 really good friends, and the group stays together for the whole 4 years. They go on vacations together, stuff like that. So that's how you learn. That brings, it breaks down the barriers. It's challenge, and uh, we're really taught to gloss over that. I mean, when I was grieving, I had so many people say, that I should be taking medications, but I knew that there was something wrong with that. That the pain was very, it was the openness. I'd never been so open in my life. And the idea of trying to numb this with drugs seemed like sacrilege, which it was. But that's really what we do in Western culture. We really cover it up and try and make it go away. But there are reasons for that, um, which is probably beyond the scope of what we want to talk about right now. So there is some usefulness to that in maintaining the situation where we are on the stage of life. Um, having our free will and stuff like that. But for healing, you want to get off the stage after a while.
That's that's a beautiful perspective, Greg. I think that it's incredible that how life's hardest moments, like the ones we had never choose, can become the very things that shape us the most.
Yes.
And
Right.
mm-hmm,
Yeah. Yeah, we start. That's one thing I discovered was that I would go on a big podcast, like
mm-hmm.
a national podcast, and a lot of people would hear it, and I'd get a call from a movie producer that would like to make our story into a movie. And so far, it hasn't worked out yet, but it would be a great story. Um, and then they would ask me to write up a screenplay, or a treatment. And of course, I'm a physician. I'm not a writer. Actually, I was a very poor writer. That's kind of one of the backstories, is that the book won an award, and I've gotten a lot of compliments for being such a good writer. And that's because basically um, this experience just opened my heart, and all these wonderful words would flow through it, and I didn't know where they were coming from. But Brian was probably part of it. So the idea, um, uh, you know, that that we understand what's going on. Okay, well, so one thing that with the idea of story theme is I was doing this, trying to learn how to do a screenplay. It turns out that there's a general structure to the story, and I wrote a beginning treatment, and the guy said it wasn't very good, and he recommended some books, and I read the books. Save the Cat, with 40 beats and a good story, first act, second act, third act, and that my story, even though I thought it was so unusual, had followed the formula exactly. And the reason that my treatment wasn't very good because I left out a lot of the painful stuff because I didn't want to get back into it, and I didn't think the reader, it was too painful for the one, the moviegoer, but they were essential to the story. So our lives follow a pattern of story, and you start with there's an emptiness, something missing, and then some big trauma happens, and you get thrown in with all this other stuff, and it looks hopeless at the end. And then only through your openness do the answers come, and the beautiful words and all that sort of stuff. So we do form our lives are all a story, and you have to start with something missing, emptiness, and then that gets filled as you go through.
And I would love to go through your book, Greg. I could already feel the raw and realness of your book.
Yeah, there's a lot there. It's very condensed, but there's a lot of stuff. It's kind of and I had to leave so many things out. So, and I I like writing very condensed. So I've gotten a lot of compliments, and a lot of people find it very helpful. And our experiences through Brian were pretty unique. So hadn't heard a lot of that stuff before.
Mhm. Greg, your story reminded us that even in our deepest loss, love never ends, it simply transforms. Your journey teaches us that challenge is not something to avoid, but something that can open doors to realms of wonder, meaning, and healing we never imagined. So, may we all find the courage to walk through our darkest valleys and discover the light that waits on the other side. Until next time on Soul Sparks, stay open, stay brave, and stay connected.